Good evening. You are watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq sends a cable of greetings to His Highness Emir of the State of Kuwait on the occasion of his country's National Day. Her Highness the Honorable Lady, the spouse of His Majesty the Sultan, congratulates teachers on the Omani Teachers' Day. Israeli strikes leave tens of people dead and wounded and warning of serious complications for thousands of patients in Gaza Strip. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq sent a cable of greetings to His Highness Sheikh Mish'al Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, Emir of the State of Kuwait, on the occasion of his country's National Day. Her Highness the Honorable Lady, the spouse of His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, congratulated teachers on the Omani Teachers' Day. The greetings message reads as follows. We are pleased to congratulate teachers, both male and female, in our dear country on the occasion of the celebration marking Omani Teachers' Day, which falls on February 24th. We value teachers' central role in the educational process and their abundant contribution in preparing future cadres, empowering them with useful knowledge, sound values and sciences, so that they could in turn contribute the service of the nation. We wish teachers success in accomplishing their important mission and extend our deep thanks to the administrative bodies and all personnel operating in the field of education. We appreciate their tangible efforts in upgrading the education system. The Israeli indiscriminate airstrikes and artillery attacks on Gaza Strip continue, leaving tens of people wounded and killed. 26 people, majority of which are children and women, were killed in Deir el-Balah after an airstrike on a residential building. The Palestinian Ministry of Health stated that the Israeli occupation committed 8 genocide incidents, claiming the lives of 92 martyrs and leaving over 120 wounded during the last hours as the conflict between the Palestinian resistance and the occupation forces has taken a turn for worse in Hay Zaytoune and the eastern and western parts of Khan Yunis city. Insufficient food supplies, alarming malnutrition rates, and spreading diseases are unfolding in the Gaza Strip, threatening the lives of numerous children in the area. The United Nations Children's Agency, the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, said last December that there is a very high risk of famine in the Gaza Strip. Its report warned of acute food insecurity that will affect all children under the age of 5 in Gaza. It also said that more than 300,000 people are at high risk of severe malnutrition and death. More than 500,000 people, or at least 1 in 4 families in the Gaza Strip, are facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity, the highest level of warning, according to another UNICEF report. The health systems in Gaza are collapsing, according to the World Health Organization. More than 2/3 of the hospitals in Gaza have shut down due to damage from ongoing conflict or the lack of fuel, water, and medical supplies. The UN General Assembly (UNGA) and the UN Security Council (UNSEC) held meetings respectively on Friday on the occasion of the second anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Denis Francis, president of the 78th session of the UNGA, called for active efforts towards a comprehensive, just and sustainable peace in line with the UN Charter while addressing the UNGA meeting on the morning. Francis pointed out that the impact of the conflict extends far beyond the borders of Ukraine. The conflict has been a significant catalyst in reshaping global geopolitics and geoeconomics. He said that it's directly harming the countries involved while also impeding progress in many others, especially the developing nations. Speaking at the Security Council meeting yesterday afternoon, China's permanent representative to the UN, Zhang Chun, called on the international community to pull together in search of a just and sensible solution to settle the crisis politically and let peace prevail as soon as possible. Chong stressed that all parties must stay in the course towards common security, respect the legitimate security concerns of all countries, and never lose sight of the fact that security is indivisible, that one country's security cannot be achieved at the expense of other countries' security, and that regional security cannot be guaranteed by strengthening or even expanding a military bloc. Russia claimed that its forces had warded off Ukraine's multiple attacks over the past week, while Ukraine said its forces had shot down a Russian surveillance aircraft amid offensive operations during the period. Russian army had warded off multiple attacks from the Ukrainian army in Kupiansk, Donetsk, and other directions, and struck the Ukrainian armed forces manpower and equipment from Feb the 17th to the 23rd, according to a briefing released by the Russian Defense Ministry one day before the two-year anniversary of the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russian armed forces conducted strikes using precision-guided weapons, including air-to-surface, long-range, and unmanned aerial vehicles, to hit facilities of the Ukrainian military-industrial complex, infrastructure of military airfields, arsenals, and fuel storage bases. On the same day, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated that the army had repelled multiple Russian attacks in Kupiansk, Bakhmut, Advinkia, and other directions, and its rocket and artillery units attacked Russian air defense systems, artillery systems, and radar stations. Fresh evacuation warnings were issued yesterday for dozens of rural Australian towns as around 1,000 firefighters battled a bushfire in Victoria State, which has destroyed properties, killed livestock, and is threatening to spread through towns. More than 2,000 people fled from their towns in Victoria's west after emergency evacuation orders were issued for people to leave while it was still safe and head to East Ballarat, 95 kilometers west of Melbourne. Firefighters, supported by more than 50 aircraft, battled to contain the massive blaze on Friday. Stronger than expected winds are spreading fires faster and closer to towns as emergency crews urge the residents to take shelter indoors if unable to leave. A cold front off Australia's south coast moved overnight to the regions and the east, battling bushfires, pushing temperatures down, but strong winds continued to fan the wildfires. Authorities in Venezuela stated that at least 15 people were killed and 11 injured in a landslide at an illegal open-pit gold mine in southern Venezuela. Thousands of miners work, most of them undocumented, extracting minerals at mine sites in the region without state regulation. Accidents frequently occur in the regions where sand shifts easily or within the machinery used to process into the ore, as noted by certain miners and environmental and human rights organizations in the past. Still to come on News Bulletin. Cultural and historic discussions are hosted in Muscat International Book Fair. The inflation rate in the Sultanate of Oman decreased last January by 0.1% compared to the same month of last year for the base year 2018, according to the National Center for Statistics and Information. The decrease in the price index is attributed to the main groups such as transportation, education, restaurants, hotels, clothing, shoes, and communications, compared to the rise in prices of food and non-alcoholic beverages group and the miscellaneous personal goods and services group, while the prices of the rest of the groups stabilized. Muscat Governorate recording the highest rate of decline in the inflation at the end of last January compared to the same period last year, as the index decreased by 4 out of 10%. The general index of residential real estate prices in the Sultanate of Oman increased by 1% in the fourth quarter of last year, reaching a value of 163.3 million Omani riyals. Statistics issued by the National Center for Statistics and Information indicated that the residential land price index witnessed a growth of 5.5%, amounting to 112.3 million Omani riyals. On the other hand, the number of residential real estate sales transactions increased by 3.9%, and residential lands accounted for 88.1% of real estate transactions in the fourth quarter of the year 2023. The total balance of credit granted by the banking sector in the Sultanate of Oman increased by 4.3% to reach 30.4 billion Omani riyals by the end of December 2023. Data issued by the central bank indicated that credit granted to private sector also recorded a growth of 4.7%, reaching 25.5 billion Omani riyals. Total deposits in the banking sector recorded a growth of 12.4% to reach 29.1 billion Omani riyals, and private sector deposits in the banking sector witnessed an increase of 10.6% to reach 19.2 billion Omani riyals by the end of December 2023. Meanwhile, Muscat International Book Fair is witnessing an intensive cultural and scientific programs with dialogue sessions on the citizenship, identity, culture, and the Palestinian cause. The Palestinian cause was reflected profoundly in the arts exhibition that depict the undeniable narrative of suffering, heroism, and victory. The book fair also hosted a discussion on the contribution of the late theater writer and artist Mohammed al-Muhandis al-Yafai, in addition to meetings and gatherings of writers who have published their works recently. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's news bulletin, here are the main points once again. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq sends a cable of greetings to His Highness Emir of the State of Kuwait on the occasion of his country's National Day. Her Highness the Honorable Lady, the spouse of His Majesty the Sultan, congratulates teachers on the Omani Teachers' Day. Israeli strikes leave tens of people dead and wounded and warning of serious complications for thousands of patients in Gaza Strip. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin from all of us here at the newsroom and the studios. Thank you for watching and have a good night.